Greetings and welcome to another episode of the A Players Podcast, where we believe that people are the key to a thriving organization, but not just any people, A players. And A players are the result of A-list leadership. I'm your host, Victoria Caldwell. And today in episode 2, we are talking about how to motivate your employees to perform at their best and also what it takes to attract and retain top performers. Every business owner and managers want top performers on their team. It's no secret that they are the lifeblood of any business, and poor performers are a liability. But how? That's where we miss the boat. How do we get our current team members to perform at their best, and how do we take care of them so that they want to take care of our business? Today's guest is Mr. Andy Patrick, a Rolls Royce apprentice and one of their last trained master craftsmen. He came to the U.S. from England in 1987 and spent the last 20 years managing various complex privately owned manufacturing facilities here in Silicon Valley. In each one, he was recruited to deliver a cultural transformation. For his success in turnaround work, he and his team has won various awards from customers, from the Chartered Institute for Personnel Development, from EEF, which is the Engineering Employers Federation, and he was also featured at the Teesside University's Business School for MBAs. So, without further ado, let's jump into our conversation with Mr. Andy Patrick. Hey, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today.
It's an honor for me and for all of our listeners. And today we're actually talking about leadership and transformational change and change management. And looking at your extensive history and your accolades in this industry, what led you down this path, considering it's not something that I see a lot of push in for as long as you've been doing it. You've been doing it for over 20 years. And so I'm curious as to what got you started here to begin with and what's been the key to your success over time.
Well, it's a long story, and I often joke with people on my teams. I've been using the same joke for a long time now, and I tell them I'm 104 years old and I've been doing this that long. And that usually gets a chuckle, but sometimes it feels like that. But the seeds that led me to have such a passion for transformational change, which is about transforming businesses from being dreary and dungeon-like and low morale, low motivation, and mediocre results. Transformational change is about changing all of that and create an uplifting culture that not only lifts people up, I mean, that's a wonderful thing to do, but also changes the business results, because the business results is what gives people that job security, and it gives the business owners and investors a reason to continue with the business. So there's always that business side, but it's the people. If you get the people side right, that's what begins to deliver that transformational change. And it first grew as a thought inside my head, let's say, when I was a very young man, and I was an apprentice master craftsman at Rolls Royce in Coventry in England as a young lad. Yeah. So that was before technology, before CNC machines, etc. So I was one of the last master craftsmen trained by Rolls Royce, and I'm proud of that. Yeah, I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, while I was doing that 4-year apprenticeship, the atmosphere, the culture, is the word we use today, was really very negative. The foreman would often bark orders at you, complain, talk down to you, be condescending, disrespectful. All these things when you're a young person, it eats away at your self-esteem. And I used to wonder, there has to be a better way than this, because I don't feel inspired. I wake up on a Monday, I don't want to go to work. I'm not interested in going to work. It wouldn't take much for me to call in sick, right?
Right.
So I began to wonder about that, even then, as a very, very young man. And then as the years rolled by, out of the blue, after I completed my apprenticeship, out of the blue, I got the opportunity to go from England to California, to go from this industrial town I was in to Sunnyvale in Silicon Valley, just as Silicon Valley was really getting started. So that was 1987. And, I worked there for a year or so. And then I thought, oh, this is difficult, adapting to a new country, new way of doing things. I'm not sure I can do this. I think I'll head back home, so to speak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I thought I just need a job to save up a little bit of money, and then I'll take off and get back there. So I looked for one more job. And in so doing, I went to work for a small, privately owned manufacturer, only about 25 people. And I met my mentor there. I didn't know at the time he would be my mentor, but he had a vision of how he wanted to grow that business. And he had a vision for how he wanted to treat people. And he took
Wow.
me under his wing and he started to coach me and mentor me. He took me to training classes. He spent time with me when we had difficulties. He stood by my side. If things went wrong, he did not come out and throw me under the bus. He came out and lifted me up and said, "We can do this."
Oh,
And
awesome.
it was. And he taught me how to treat people and how to build teams. He was the first person that talked to me about the Dr. Bruce Tuckman's 4 stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing, what that means. And so some of the science behind building teams. But also he taught me the flair of how to lift people up. And I was young, very young, so I did not always get it right and sometimes got it wrong. And we worked together for quite a few years. And then he went off to do something else. And I left to go to another company. He sold that company. I left to go to another company. And I just expected everywhere would be like that because it was great. But when I got to the next place,
You were in for a rude awakening.
I could only
He
describe it.
convinced you to stay here and not go back to England.
He did. That is true, by the way. I was getting ready, to get that plane ticket. But once I started working with him, I forgot about that. It was so good. I was enjoying myself. We were getting there. I'm not exaggerating. We were getting there at 6 a.m. in the morning, and we wouldn't leave till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, depending what we were doing. And we were just loving it. And by the way, that company went from 25 to 200 people in 4 years.
Wow.
It exploded. It exploded. And the reason it exploded was its performance. And the reason for its performance was its people. And the reason the people were doing such a good job was because the leader, Lewis, just had that way about leading people in such a way that you lifted them up, inspired them, and they wanted to perform for the company. And what a difference.
Wow.
It was an incredible experience. And I thought, well, it's great. Everywhere's like this, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. And I got to the next place and it was a dungeon. It was a dungeon. And the owner, he was curious. He'd heard about the place I worked, heard how successful it was. And he asked me, "Andy, how did they do that, by the way? Can you do that here?" So that was sort of my introduction of, okay, go ahead and create what you just left, recreate it.
Wow.
Boy, that was hard. That was hard. And so where I start and where I've learned to continue starting when I arrive at a company is you start with everybody that's in any kind of leadership role. And you start to pour in your effort into training and developing and mentoring those people because they will become your force multipliers.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, you think about it. You think about the mathematics behind it. Let's say, Victoria, you get hired to go into a 200-person company and they tell you, with all your passion and all your belief, Victoria, we would like you to build a positive culture that drives performance. You would say, yeah, I'd love to do that. I want that too. But then you realize you're one person in a sea of 200, and mathematically, it's impossible. It will take you the rest of your life.
Yes.
So that's why I learned early on, go to the leadership team, pour your heart and soul into developing them. Make sure you got the right people in the right seats. If you haven't, take a careful look at that. Don't be so quick to throw people out. They may just be in the wrong role or they've had the wrong leadership previously.
Exactly.
Most people, in fact, all people, keep this one in mind. All people show up to work wanting to do a good job. Virtually every employee in the world shows up to work wanting to do a good job. It is the job of the leadership team to create the environment for that to happen. for those
Exactly.
people to succeed. So start with your leadership team and you start to develop those people, you start to train them, and you start to mentor them, and then you use some of those tools that have been around a long time, like Tuckman's forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Can you say that one again?
It's Dr. Bruce Tuckman.
Dr. Bruce Tartman. Okay.
Bruce Tuckman, yeah, he wrote a thing called Group Dynamics in 1965 as his doctorate thesis, I think at the University of Michigan. I might be wrong about that. You'd have to check those facts. And it became widely known as forming, storming, norming, and performing. And what he said was there are 4 stages to team building. It's the forming, storming, norming, and performing. And he went on to describe them in great detail, what the dynamics were and what happens and what your role as a leader is to guide the team through there. So when you get to that performing stage, it is on fire. It is on fire.
Wow.
And the unity is there and the harmony is there. But it doesn't happen by accident. So you
Very
need tools like that in your toolbox.
Some of the older ideas are actually very, very relevant.
Yep. Yeah, I use a few of them, and maybe it's because I'm 104 years old.
You look great for 104, by the way. I need to bottle whatever it is that you're using.
So it's so technology is great, right? And it has its place, of course it does, and we're not going forward without it. Let's face it. And there are more modern theories on team building and motivation, and some of them are well known, like Hertzberger's hygiene theory for motivation, Knight's and Wilmot's forms of control, and there's a lot of theories out there. But most of them, you can trace them back to some of the early theories. You can go back to the early part of the 20th century when Henry Ford first started using scientific management to transform his company. But in Ford's case, there was no thought about the people side of it. His thought of transformation was all about lean manufacturing and organizing a factory for maximum productivity. And he skipped over the people side. So that was early 20th century. But if you go to one of the most widely known theories of human motivation, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it is the one I use every day. And by the way, I use it with my children too, to create. I do. I do. And they have been trouble-free. And so it's about Maslow is about creating a sense of belonging, a sense of accomplishment, raising people's self-esteem. And Maslow too often is looked at as an academic exercise. And Maslow wrote this theory in 1943. So it's another one that us 104-year-old people know.
Yeah.
So I was there when he wrote it. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs ends up as an academic exercise for most people in a business course somewhere, and they miss the point. For a handful of leaders, they look at it and they recognize that you can take all of what Maslow's saying and you can translate it into practical things you do as a leader. And your job is to lift people up from that. Maslow has 5 levels. So you lift people up from the first level to the second, to the third, to the fourth, where maximum motivation lives. You don't worry about the 5th, which is self-actualization. But you do worry about the 3rd and the 4th, where Maslow talks about a sense of belonging and a sense of accomplishment and somebody's self-esteem feeling good.
Right. So what are those stages from 1 to 5? And you said 5 you don't worry about.
I don't. So the first one is physiological. In other words, you need to have food and water. You need the basics to survive, right?
Okay.
And then the second one is safety and security. So you can translate that to, let's say you're a homeless person. The only thing you're going to worry about is the first one, food and water. Then somebody offers you a job, safety, right? Now you've got income and you can find shelter. So the second level is safety. So that's shelter and security. You're safe. You're not under physical threat. You have somewhere to stay warm and stay dry.
Well, on safety, I would think that'd be like job security too. Is that
exactly
job security and not being afraid that you're gonna lose your job?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Let's talk about that point for a moment. So as we got Maslow's levels up his hierarchy, to use the tool, you want to translate it into practical, everyday, pragmatic things. And
Yeah.
you just hit on the most important. So at that second level where you have a job, you've just got a job offer, you've been out of work or whatever. So now you feel secure. Now in that job, if the culture in there is very threatening, it's very intimidating, and every day feels like it could be your last day,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to give your best. You can't. You're terrified. You're waiting to fall down to that next level of insecurity. You're waiting to drop back down to that bottom level. So if we apply Maslow, when people join us at work, we want them to feel secure. We're not there to intimidate them. We're not going to get the best out of them by browbeating, which is the most common approach to trying to motivate people, putting people under pressure, etc. The leader lifts people up and becomes the cheerleader. You can do it. We've hired you because we believe in you. We're going to train you, support you, encourage you, and we're going to train you well, and you're going to succeed. You give somebody that confidence. Now they start to move to the third level, which is a sense of belonging. So, and it's easy to understand the sense of belonging. Anybody that follows sports feels a sense of belonging to their favorite team.
Yes.
They do. And they'll talk about them as we, us, we won. I didn't see you on the field. What do you mean we won? You weren't there.
I'm guilty when it comes to my alma mater.
Exactly, right?
We're in this together.
Yep. So you want to create that at work. And that's what Maslow's telling us, really. Create that sense of belonging. And it can be silly things. You know, you give people a badge to wear, or you have a motto, and you begin to create that sense of belonging. Just the same as, you know, you talk about your alma mater or a sports team, or there's lots of examples of it in our life. And we just need to understand how to apply that at work. So as that sense of belonging and that confidence begins to grow, now you start to set that person stretch goals. So now this is where it really starts to benefit the business and lift the person up simultaneously. You start to set stretch goals and you help that person accomplish them. Your job as a leader is to make that person successful. Your job as a leader is not about your own glory. Your job is about making your team a success. So you help that person now get to that fourth level, accomplishment, things they thought they couldn't do. Now they're doing them. That person is showing up for work, bouncing off the walls, ready to do anything that company needs. They cannot wait to get to work in the morning. They look forward to seeing their colleagues. They have a powerful sense of camaraderie, cohesion, and one team with one purpose. When you create that, the performance is off the charts. All you have to do then is the management side of your job, a good system, an organized workplace. You already have the workforce ready to go. Is this making any sense?
Oh, it's making perfect sense. So this is the first place you start.
Yeah.
Because some ask you, like, where do I start? And it's also for those who ask, what happens when you inherit a team that's not, and I'm sure you probably had that experience as well. What happens when you inherit a team that maybe there's low morale and you just...
So let's talk about that. When you inherit a team. So first of all, let's go through, say, a theoretical situation. You get offered a job as a manager at a company. And show up on the first day. I've got news for you. Nobody stood there with open arms saying, thank goodness you're here. We've been waiting for you.
What? Are you serious?
The truth is,
no one?
No one. The truth is, people are thinking, who is this person? Your new direct reports, they're thinking, who's this person? What's Victoria going to be like? Boy, is she going to be mean? Is she going to be tough? Is she going to take it easy on me? Will she know that I've got 10 years here and I've been doing a great job? Or will I get off on the wrong foot with them? For those people who now report to you, it's stressful. They are wondering about you. So the first thing you've got to do is to earn their trust and their respect. So there's a couple of scenarios. You may show up for a company that wants you to clean house and they're ruthless. You've probably gone to work for a company that's never going to have a good culture. Or you may show up at a company and they say, We want you to take a look at our people and see what you can do with them. So you've got your direct reports. Let's say you've got 10 managers reporting to you. The first thing you need is their trust and their respect. That is where you start. So they're curious about you. So you start to do some of Dr. Bruce Tuckman. You go back to his forming stage, the forming, storming, norming, and performing. And in that forming stage, you're getting to know people. They're curious about you. You're curious about them. Okay. That is step one, Victoria. Trust and respect, because they're not going to follow you and they're not going to believe in you until you earn that. So when you stand up in front of that team and you introduce yourself, at that time, the words are easy. It is your actions over time that are going to make a difference.
Right.
You will win them over through your behavior, not through your words. Anyone can stand up there and say, I'm an uplifting leader. I'm going to look after you. Yeah, right. When they see it, when they see it, they'll believe it. So there's a time period there. It's not instant. Right? So that's that forming bit. Then as the team begins to trust you and you begin to trust them and you start to give some challenges, you are working both Maslow and Tuckman simultaneously. And I'll throw in a third one for you, McGregor's X and Y leadership theory, where theory X is about a Brooks leadership style, where you are very directive and giving orders and not empowering people, as opposed to the opposite end, the Y leadership style, which is empowered employees who you give very little direction to and they know what to do. But you have to create that. So you have to earn the theory Y culture. And you do that by going through the stages of Maslow and going through the forming, storming, norming, and performing. So it's important to understand there's no silver bullet here. And if you look on LinkedIn, you'll frequently see what I would call clickbait. You know, there's little paragraphs on leadership that people post up there in order to get some attention, some people to read their posts. And I understand that. And they'll say, great leaders do this or great leaders do that. And you can't capture leadership in one phrase. You may have a wonderful quote and it's interesting and it's amusing and all those things, but leadership is a big subject.
Right.
So in this theoretical situation, the wonderful Victoria has shown up in this new job. You've said who you are and what you believe in, and now you have to deliver through your actions, not through your words. So in those early stages, you begin to establish that team, and you will find that virtually every company you go to, people have been promoted but not given the training. So you may inherit, and that's what we're talking about, inheriting a team. You may inherit a disenfranchised and low energy, low morale team.
Right.
And in some ways, that's great fun because you get to turn it around.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. So the first step is that gap analysis. In that early stage, when you're doing the forming and you're beginning to lift people, figure out how to lift people up Maslow's hierarchy, you're doing a mental gap analysis. You're spending time with people and you're mentally, quietly assessing their ability. Where are they at? How competent are they in their role? How knowledgeable are they in leadership? How knowledgeable are they in team building? How do they treat their people? Are they open to change? Are they open to mentoring? Can you train them? You're making all those assessments inside the first 60 days, if not sooner. And then by the end of that 90 days, you need some kind of plan. Hope is not a plan.
Oh, no.
So when you're ready, as you're earning that trust and respect, at some point you unveil, and I've just done this recently in my latest project, you unveil that plan. And if you've done it right, those people will be nodding their head saying, yeah, it's about time. We've been waiting for someone to come in and do this. Did you know the management here are jerks and they don't have a plan? Thank goodness you're here. And that's honestly what people are thinking.
Yeah.
So you find a place to do that. You find a room, your office somewhere where you can put it all on the wall and you get your team in there and you start meeting and you start creating a sense of belonging and a purpose and a direction for that team. And you will see Maslow, Tuckman, and McGregor coming together those tools will come together to produce a great team. And that is how you inherit a team and take it forward.
Awesome. Awesome. And now what about now you got the team, and this is what I've heard some leaders talk about when they leave, when this team leaves and a new leader comes in, a lot of times the culture changes, it reverts back.
Yeah, it does.
Because the leadership has changed. It has to be established in the organization.
So what you're talking about there is weaving into the fabric of the company, what that culture is.
Yeah.
There are ways to do that. So if you try to define, what is culture, it is how things are done, right? So it's systems, it's behavior, it's employee appraisals, it's human resource policies, it is management style and leadership, it is quality control. It's all the things that make that company work. But most of all, it's how the leadership conducts itself. So if it's a company full of tyrants, you can expect that to continue. If it's a company with only one good leader and 7 tyrants and a new leader comes in, they'll probably become a tyrant in no time at all.
Wow.
Yeah, because the dominant culture is not a good one. So you can have isolated pockets of good culture inside a company, but if you weave it into the fabric, and it has to come from the top, you weave it into the fabric from the top down, that these are our standards, this is our behavior, this is how we train our leaders, this is how we promote people. That's how you keep it in the fabric of that company. So there has to be a real commitment from the top down.
From the top down.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That pretty much, well, I guess within the 3 resources that you mentioned, it deals with cultural change, but the interpersonal clashes, motivation, trust.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things. Motivation, trust you touched on. And you focus on those, and then you'll have a team that lasts as long as it's weaved within the fabric of the organization, especially from the top down.
Yeah. You can make, if somebody owns a business, and I work mostly for family-owned businesses, but not always. So most of my experiences with privately owned companies, if it's believed in from the top, you can weave it into that company, and it become. And the same thing happened at Google. Google was once a tiny little company, and somebody at the top said, "This is the approach we want to take. We want to attract the best people. Therefore, we need the best culture." Because the A-list players want to be part of that culture, and they get to choose, by the way. They get to choose where they work. So those companies that don't believe in culture, don't think it's necessary, they've got one anyway, it's just not a good one.
Yeah.
And companies like Google or Disney or Virgin's a fascinating company. Because they are in multiple industries, and yet in every industry they're in, they have the same culture.
Exactly.
So when people say to you, "Oh, that won't work in our company," nonsense. It won't work if you've got poor leaders, but it will work in any company, right? It will work. And so I've worked in various industries, and each time it works every time. And it's wonderful to see people who have not received good leadership. It's wonderful to see them become all that they can be. And I find great pleasure in seeing a group of people who were in conflict, disrespectful to each other, over time change and learn how to respect each other and support each other and be one team. It's a wonderful thing, I think.
It's a wonderful thing. We don't see it very often.
No, we're too quick to look for what divides us as opposed to what brings us together.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think Maslow is wonderful, because I believe myself, rightly or wrongly, I believe that Maslow applies to all people, everywhere, every country, every background. I believe Maslow applies, and that is safety, security, creating love, belonging, and that sense of accomplishment. It doesn't matter where you are. We all enjoy that. We all feel good about that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, this has been so awesome. I don't even know how to top that. But you one more question. Well, it might end up being more, but you mentioned companies, and I know Facebook is another one that has an awesome company culture, because I know several people who work there and they have a phenomenal culture as well here in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And then they have, Sheryl Sandberg is there. I think it's COO, and she's phenomenal. What do you think the correlation is between the most successful companies like Virgin and Google and Facebook and the culture?
Well, I think at some point in their journey, they recognize that it's a business competitive advantage to get the best out of their people.
Yeah.
And that the majority of companies, their human resources, especially in small companies, is really not human resources, it's benefits administration. And it's usually somebody in accounting takes that on, right? And there's
Yeah.
no real commitment to understanding what human resources is. But those companies, they were once small. And when they were small, somebody somewhere said, you know what, if we make this an awesome place to work, we really need the best of the best. And we're going to get them here. Because Mark Zuckerberg couldn't do it on his own.
Right.
Richard Branson couldn't do it on his own. Steve Jobs is famous for all his quotes about getting the best out of people and hiring the best people. And they recognized early on that that was a competitive advantage. And they're business people that want to outperform their competitors.
Yeah.
And
They attract the best talent.
Yeah. So early on,
and retain them.
Yeah, they retain them. Yeah, which is key, isn't it? So
Yeah.
early on, they realized there are certain elements to that is its own field. It's not some kind of black magic. It's not some kind of hokey pokey gray area. It's a very real area about how you earn respect, the work environment, setting people up to be successful. Training is a big one, investing in training. The number of companies that just don't train their people, they just hire them, point them in a general direction and say, your machine is over there, your work cubicle is over there. Ask Joe to show you what to do. That is it.
Joe knows.
And then when that person fails, you're like, oh, get rid of them, get someone else. Yeah. Well, who's really failing? Management and leadership is failing in that company. In fact, I'd say there is no leadership. There is without a doubt a direct correlation between investing in culture and being deliberate about it and business success. And you only have to look at the evidence in front of your eyes. All the companies you just mentioned, they will attribute their culture to their success.
Absolutely. Yeah. But why do you think this has not been really adopted? Because Google has been around for a long time now, and they're known for their culture. Virgin is known for their culture. What is it that is not connecting with other companies, even their competitors, to say, maybe I should try adopting or mimicking the products they put out, but not what is core to their success, which is their culture?
Well, that's a great question, isn't it? I don't know if anybody's got the answer to that. I really don't. I've puzzled over that one, and you can see it all over LinkedIn. And I've truly puzzled about this because it's not a secret that culture is an important part of company success. You can even go back to the former GE CEO, Jack Welch, and he wrote some great books about business.
Right.
And he wrote a lot about culture.
Right.
And so he knew then in building that business empire, getting the culture right was key to it. And at his level, he was buying, multi-billion-dollar businesses and finding that they had a culture that stunk. And he even failed on some of those at getting them turned around and resold the business, gave up on it. So culture can be a negative culture, and I've experienced this too, can be deeply, deeply ingrained to the point where it will make you ill trying to change it. And so that it has to come from the top. There has to be someone at the top that recognizes that this is a business objective, and it needs to be part of the plan for that company to have a competitive internal culture that people enjoy working in, that lifts people up, and they have to invest in training people, retaining people, and making it a pleasure to show up at your place of work. Somewhere exciting to go. And it has to be more than a paycheck. I think the most common mistake I come across is this never-ending belief that if you pay people enough money, they should be happy, motivated, and they'll show up for work every day. They'll take the money, who wouldn't? But they're not going to show up motivated, happy, and doing their best work.
Going to do just enough to get by.
Yeah, and keep taking that paycheck. Yeah, exactly. Wow. That's exactly it. I mean, the tools are there if people can be bothered to understand them. Maslow has been around forever, right? And we've already mentioned Tuckman and McGregor and Hertzberg, and there's lots of others. And these people, these academics, spent their life studying this. So it's worth spending a few hours, looking into it, and then figuring out how you can apply that and becoming a practitioner of Maslow. I consider myself a practitioner of Maslow. I put it into practice all the time, and it can be little things. Here's a little example, costs you nothing, little bit of time, that will have an amazing impact on people. So somebody does something at work that you're pleased with, you recognize, they pass a training course or something. Write a letter by hand to their home, telling them how pleased you are and what a great job they did and what a difference they're making. I guarantee you, they will open that letter, show it to their family, and their pride will be bursting out of their chest. These are small things that create that sense of belonging and that sense of accomplishment. That person will be back the next day and will be seeking you out to say thank you and what can I do for you next?
And what can I do for you next?
Yeah.
And they'll be, not that that's the goal, but they'll definitely be boasting about how they have the best manager or leader.
And when they do that, you turn that around, you say, well, thank you very much, but it's not for me, it's for the team. It's for the team. And as a leader, you have to show that the team comes first. If you start painting your name on a parking spot in the parking lot and letting your ego take over, you will lose the thread of that culture. You need to be humble and be part of that team. For heaven's sake, you're building a team. You're not to be on a throne somewhere as the leader. You're to be that person that inspires people. You should be the first one there in the morning, out in the warehouse, out in the factory, out in the office, greeting people, asking them, how's your family? How are your kids getting on? How's school going? And showing a genuine interest in your people.
Right.
These are little things straight out of Maslow's playbook. This is all Maslow. Take the time to do this. If you're too busy for your people, they'll be too busy for you. Okay? So take time.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you've been doing this for quite some time and been sought out for this and won several awards for your results.
Yes.
When you're being sought out, what are they experiencing as an organization that makes them seek you out?
It's usually an owner or somebody close to the top pulling their hair out saying, I can't do anything with this. The more I threaten people, the worse it gets. The more I punish people, the worse it gets. And we're ready to give up. We're ready to close or sell this business. We need to replace everyone. We need to fire everyone. This is no good. And it's a last throw of the dice. And they think, well, maybe there's something in all this talk about culture and being positive. And sometimes, they're interested in my lean manufacturing background as well sometimes. And but it's not the lean manufacturing background that changes the results. It's a part of it for sure. There's no doubt about that because it creates efficiency. But the reason they're usually failing at implementing lean, failing with ISO, or failing with AS9100, which are all manufacturing systems.
Yes.
And the reason they're failing is because they're failing with their people. So they'll say, let's roll the dice. Let's see if this person over here, we've got nothing to lose.
By this time they have nothing to
let's try.
So at this point, but that's the best way to get the management or the leadership to change from the top, because now the top is desperate for the change. The leadership is desperate for a change. Because I was thinking, well, what would make a leadership with toxic organizations be open to this type of change? And it's usually like people don't buy preventative measures. They want a way out of the hole that they're already in. So when you say it's not working, threatening, meaning the performance is going down, sales.
Let's not lose sight of that, right? So it's a business. So So there should be, and sometimes there isn't, there should be measures of performance. Sometimes what there is, there's only what are called measures of output. For example, they're called outward related performance indicators. So let's say a company is looking at its profits and its profits keep dropping. That's an outward related performance indicator. In other words, it's only seeing the output of the factory and it's not looking inside at where the problem is. So I often find when I go into these places, there's very few internal measures of performance. And therefore, I already know that the people there are only there for a paycheck because they're not connected to any goals. There's no department goals. There's no sense of accomplishment. So Maslow is absent. I know that. And usually the owner of the business doesn't understand that, is not interested in that. I've even heard them say, well, to me, this is a quote, by the way, from one owner during the interview. To me, culture is about ballet. What do you mean we have to get the culture right? And my heart sank.
Oh, wow. You're like, oh, boy, I'm in for it.
So think about how these pieces fit together. We talked earlier about how the leaders, first thing you need is that trust and respect, and you invest time in your leaders. But simultaneously, in parallel, you better be looking at the business, at the numbers.
Yeah.
So you look for how is this business measuring its performance? If it is only outward measures, there's a problem. You need some internal measures. What's the defect rate inside? What's the on-time delivery inside? What's the efficiency of the equipment? What's the efficiency of the people? You need to get some measures in place. So that's that lean manufacturing toolbox, bringing that into use too. You can apply it in just about any industry. I can't think of one where you can't apply it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely, because my degree is in operations management. So we had to do a lot of, even though I ended up in marketing, it still applies.
Yeah. So sometimes what we see, Victoria, is either the company's only looking at people or as what it needs to do, or it's only looking at the business and ignoring the people side. And you need both to be a Google, to be a Facebook. You need both.
Absolutely.
Great product, great, well-run, efficient business with great people who are motivated. And the two are not incompatible. The two go together.
Right, right.
And Maslow is not incompatible to a great business. If you see a business that does not have internal measures, you see a business that does not have Maslow. Because there's no sense of accomplishment. There's no measure of what we're doing. We're just showing up for a paycheck. Oh, what do you want me to do today? I'll pack those parts, drill those holes, paint that room. What is it you want me to do today? But there's no measure of accomplishment. There's no sense of that.
Right.
Making sense still? I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, no, I'm just... No. You're awesome. I'm just taking it all in.
Well, sometimes they'll call me because they're failing to implement like lean. And even where I'm at today, which is a really fun up and coming company, in the first few weeks in there, walking around doing an informal gap analysis that we talked about earlier, and I can see these performance boards, these big whiteboards with grids on them and signs and stuff, and they're dotted around the factory. And eventually I asked, is anybody using those? No, they're not used. We had somebody did that before, but it never worked. We gave up on it. Like, oh,
wow.
Well, I find that very common, right? To me, that's very telling. They're like ancient monuments, It's like being in Athens or something. You're walking down the streets and you see so many ancient monuments there. People just walk past them as if they're not there. They're so used to being there. And this is the same. It's just like that. So you can go to companies all over the Bay Area and you'll find that they've had previous attempts at improvement, previous attempts at getting the culture right. And you can see evidence, like ancient monuments, you can see evidence around their building of that. And what that tells you is they never had a unified, committed leadership team to succeed at their strategy.
So not a unified, committed leadership team.
Yeah.
So you said that in the beginning, you have to start with the leadership team. Well, first start at the top and then train the leaders.
Unless you have a cape with a big S on the back, you're not doing it on your own, right? You're just not. You will make yourself ill trying to do that. And it will just take your whole life. So you need those force multipliers. That is so you've got formal leaders and you've got informal leaders. So your formal leaders are those people who have authority and titles. But you also have informal leaders. You've got the person that's been there 20 years who's very influential but has no title, but they're very influential and they're respected by their fellow workers, let's say. And so they're exerting influence. So you need their respect too. And when you're doing your gap analysis, if you're paying attention, you'll notice who they are. And you should pay homage to what they've done. Hey, you've built this company long before I came here. And I'm going to acknowledge that and I'm going to respect that. You were here 20 years before me and look at what you did. So you give that respect to both the informal leaders and the formal leaders. And so you earn that trust. You earn your right to be part of that team. Then when you say we're going to turn left, we're going to turn right, we're going to climb this hill, they'll go with you.
Yeah.
You can't storm that hill on your own. It ain't happening.
Yeah. And I like that you said that, we're in this together, because a lot of, let's say managers, I'll say managers, not leaders. Managers come in and think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because they think they have little minions to
Yes.
bark out orders to. And that's how they view management. And you mentioned something about the difference between management and leadership.
Yeah. Well, it's a big difference, I think. So I think all good leaders should be able to manage, of course. But you can have somebody who's a good manager but a terrible leader. And so what I mean by that is they're on top of the numbers. They know what's got to go out the door that day, what's got to be done, what the objectives are. But they are a dreadful leader, and people leave in droves. Nobody trusts them. People are always looking to get out of the department or to get out of the company. And then the people underneath them are just not inspired. That's a dreadful leader. And that is not unusual. It's not unusual. And the harsh reality is, for companies that want to build a great culture, they cannot afford to have leaders like that. They either have to retrain them, which is sometimes not doable, or they have to have the courage. And this is the part I always dislike, but you have to have the courage sometimes to part company with people. But then again, if you're going to do that, do it professionally. Do it for cause, not because of personalities.
Yeah. And that's the first time I've heard it, great manager, but a terrible leader, in that they're focused on what's going to make them look good.
Yeah.
Basically what it sounds like you're saying. They're focusing on the numbers and the deliverables, but they're not building the right culture that's going to.
Well, what happens, Victoria, with a manager like that, they may well, to the business owner or investor or the person at the top of the tree, they may look like a good manager because they're always on top of the numbers. In other words, what's got to be done, and they're on top of the internal knowledge. And so they're on top of their game, right? They know what's going on. But it's all about their own career. And when that person leaves, the team, the performance falls apart because it was all about that one person. And there are CEOs like this too, where the company's succeeding because of they're such a strong Theory X leader that they actually look like they're a good leader and they're getting good results. But the moment they leave, they haven't built a culture. They haven't ever got that Theory Y leadership going, and it falls apart and people wonder why. Well, this is why. They've not empowered or built the right culture. They've built a culture that is fully dependent on them. And as long as they're there barking orders, and as long as they don't take a vacation, and as long as they don't leave, that company will continue to succeed. And these people do succeed, and in the eyes of some, they do a good job. But they do not build a lasting culture that once they've gone, they've got no legacy. The only thing they've got for a legacy is a dungeon that falls apart as soon as they leave.
Yes, this has been such an amazing session that I think it's going to add so much value and so much insight to those who actually are interested in building companies and businesses and cultures that actually last. And Jack Welch talks about that too.
Yeah, he does. He does. You're well read. You look so young. I didn't think you'd know those things, but.
Well, I'm using your tonic.
Oh. Okay, we have to find out how to sell
that. Yeah, it's the tonic. I'm approaching 104 too. So.
Well, speaking of tonics, I mean, there's no greater tonic as a leader than to see, the young people that you mentor, and they start to really do well. And sometimes you have that bittersweet thing where they move on to a bigger opportunity at another company. And while you're pleased for them and their family, you're sad to see them go. But sometimes there becomes that moment in their career where you don't have the next thing for them, and they've got to go somewhere else to keep their career going. But it's a great tonic as a leader to see people become all that they can be, to rise up and really become very competent as leaders and managers, that combination. And I'd love to see that. There's no more satisfying feeling as a practitioner of Maslow than to see people become really something.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely makes a huge difference. So since we're wrapping up, the one question I wanted to ask you now is, if all of you put out a whole lot, but if the listeners had to take away one message from you today, what would that be?
Well, I'll try and answer that, because like we said earlier, there's always a danger that, people look for that one phrase about leadership, but clearly it's many, many things. But the one thing I would say take away is, wherever you go as a leader, the first thing to do, the most important thing you do, is earn and maintain that trust and respect. It takes a long time to earn it, and you can lose it in one day, no problem. So wherever you go, earn that trust and respect. And even after you have it, never stop trying to earn it.
Never stop trying to earn it.
Never stop. Even when you feel like people are following you and they look up to you and they revere you, that's great. That's great. But now keep earning it. Don't drop your guard. Don't let it go, because you've got to keep earning it every day.
Awesome. Now we know why you're sought after so much.
Thank you.
So I don't even know if you want to do this, but if you do, let our listeners know how they can reach out to you.
I hadn't thought about that, but I'm happy to talk with anyone. You can find me on LinkedIn, and my email is there. I don't hide it. And I'm happy to answer questions for people, and happy to exchange opinions. I don't pretend to know it all, because a lifetime's not long enough to know it all. Even 104, right?
Well, obviously, we're still learning here.
But I can look back on a lot of mistakes I've made, and they're humbling. They're humbling. And at the time, especially when we're young, our egos get in the way, and so on and so forth. And especially for men, less so for women, I think. So, but if someone wants to, talk about any of these things, any of these subjects, or take a deep dive on them, get a hold of me on LinkedIn or on my email, which is andypatrick777@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm hoping you'll come back again.
Anytime, Victoria. It's been a real pleasure to spend this time with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. And if you want to get the resources that Andy mentioned in this episode, just visit teamimpress.com/2. teamimpress.com/2. There you'll get the show notes, all of the resources he mentioned, and how to reach out to him if you want to connect with him. And now here's a little preview from the next episode.
Right. The turnover rate of losing a good salesperson is astronomical, because the cost of the time and money it takes for HR, a manager, to take time out of their day to interview. And you're interviewing not just one or two people, you're interviewing several people. Plus you've got an open territory. So being able to communicate and get the most out of your people and have them, hit their numbers and enjoy going to work is huge.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the A Players Podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to the show, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye now.